So our weekly Shiur usually deals with sugis of the weekly parsha, or in Yonah de Yoiman, before Yemei Chag and Moyed, before very special days. We always are oisek behilchoi sachag Moshe tikkun lehem li Yisrael sheoisken behilchoi sachag bechag. And today we will be oisek in halachas of Purim and special halachas for this special year. So in Yerushalayim we have Purim Meshulash, 3 days of Purim. And the mitzvahs of Purim are divided, split up between 3 days. Friday, Mikra Megillah, and even Yerushalmi read the Megillah and Yud Daled. The entire Jewish world this year reads the Megillah in the very same day, and that will be Friday. So in all other places in the world, Friday is Purim. Entirety of Purim is Friday in Yerushalayim. Mikra Megillah, Matonas Erev Yonim Friday. Ala Nisim Shabbos. Sudas Purim Mishloach Monas Sunday. So the Shulchan Aruch at the end of Siman Tov Reish Peches gives us this division. When Tes Vav Shushan Purim falls on Shabbos, Matonas Erev Yonim Mikra Megillah Friday. Ala Nisim Shabbos. Sudas Purim Sunday. Shulchan Aruch doesn't mention Mishloach Monas, and one wonders. He skips Mishloach Monas. Mishnah Berurah on the spot says Mishloach Monas Sunday together with Sudas Purim. Chazon Ish disagrees in Siman Kuf Nun Hey and Orachaim. Chazon Ish says Mishloach Monas and Matonas Erev Yonim always go together. Mishloach Monas Friday. Why doesn't the Mechaber mention Mishloach Monas? I think the Mishnah Berurah is right, and that's Minhag Oilam. I can't say Minhag Oilam, Minhag Yerushalayim. And it is the opinion of most poskim. So why doesn't the Mechaber talk about Mishloach Monas? This proves what I wrote in Minchas Osha Chelik Beis. And I said this many times in public. Mishloach Monas and Sudas Purim are two sides of the very same coin. Trumas Hadeshen writes in Siman Kuf Yud that why must one give food? And you can be Mekayim the mitzvah Mishloach Monas with china, with jewelry, with sforim, with anything else, only food. Because the objective and the goal and the rationale of Mishloach Monas is to try to do our best to ensure that every Jewish family will have food on the table, b'simchas Purim. And that is why if the Suda is Sunday, Mishloach Monas should be Sunday. And this is so obvious to the Shulchan Aruch, he doesn't even see a need to mention it. I also have another argument or another svara, and I say, if we give Mishloach Monas Erev Shabbos, and Mishloach Monas associated with Sudas Purim, but Kvod Shabbos is a greater mitzvah than Sudas Purim, so all the tasty and very special food we will get in Mishloach Monas, we should eat and consume on Shabbos. So it will not be left over to Sudas Purim, and therefore, Minhag Oilam, or rather Minhag Yerushalayim, Mishnah Berurah is right. Mishloach Monas and Sudas Purim Sunday, Matonas Erev Yonim Mikra Megillah Friday. What is Shabbos left with? And that is Shushan Purim. Ala Nisim. One additional halacha that is found in the Gemara. We don't read the Megillah on Shabbos. Gzeira Shema Yavirenu Daladamis B'Shus Harabim. But instead of the Megillah, we should be Oisek Behilchas Chag. And this coming Shabbos Kodesh, Shabbos afternoon, naturally, I'll be speaking in my shul in various different halachas regarding Purim. I'm not going to talk about Mikra Megillah because we did that on Friday already. I will talk about Sudas Purim and Mishloach Monas. So what will the entire world do on Erev Shabbos? We, Yerushalmi, will have Sudas Purim on Sunday. But all the rest of Eden in the entire world, of the Jewish people, will have Sudas Purim on Friday. Various different minhagim. The Ramah writes, Tov Reish Tzadik Hey Siv Beis, that the minhag is, in normal years, when Purim doesn't fall on Friday, that we start the Suda Purim afternoon, and we keep the Suda till after Tzesek HaChovim, till nightfall. But the Ramah writes, you need to be makpid that the most of the Suda, the majority of the Suda, the bulk of the Suda should be Purim. And not just wash Samach Leshkia, and most of the Suda will be by night. This Ramah is based on Trumas Adeshan and Siman Kuf Yud. So the Ramah writes, Haroit Salasoi Sudas Purim Meshulash every year, Arashus Biyodoi. But when Purim falls Erev Shabbos, that is the halacha. We should make the Suda in the morning. Kedei sheyochel Suda Shabbos l'teyavoin. If the very first mission in Arvei Psochim Tzadik Teh says, we don't have a Suda Erev Pesach in the afternoon, Kedei sheyochel matzah l'teyavoin, same applies to Shabbos, Kedei sheyochel Suda Shabbos l'teyavoin. So Samach Lamincha every day, you cannot eat a Suda half hour before Mincha, but this then applies to Mincha Ktana, not to Mincha Gedoyla. But there is an Indian Shiyochel Suda Shabbos L'Teyavoin. So the Ramah says when Purim falls Erev Shabbos, we should make the Suda Shachris. Other days, we make the Suda in the afternoon, but the majority, most of the Suda needs to be on Purim, Ba'oid Hayoim Godoil, you could bench after nightfall. So I said the source of this halacha is Tumas Adeshan. Tumas Adeshan writes, my Rabbeim, my great teachers, and I follow in their footsteps. We always make Sudas Purim Shachris every year, not only when Purim is Erev Shabbos. But the minhag of the world is, says the Tumas Adeshan, to make the Suda in the afternoon. Why is that? Because in the morning we're torrid, we're busy with the other mitzvahs, Mishloach Monos, Matonas Lavyoinim, Mikro Megillah. So the Megillah takes some time. And many people read the Megillah more than once. Many people come home and read the Megillah again to their girls and their wives and family members. And some tzaddikim go from one home to the other to read the Megillah to the elderly, to the sick, to people that couldn't make it to shul. So we're busy with Terdes Hayom, with Terdes HaMitzvah, and that is why we don't make the Megillah Shachris. So it is clear in Tumas Adeshan that it would be preferable to make the Suda in the morning. The Kaf HaChaim brings that Al Pi Kabbalah we should make the Suda in the morning. That would be better than make it in the afternoon. But the Tumas Adeshan does write, and the Ramah follows in its footsteps, the minhag is to make the Suda in the afternoon. Why? Tumas Adeshan says, because in the morning we're busy with the other mitzvahs. I think there might be another reasoning as well, but this is just a practical reasoning. What is supposed to be the nature of Sudas Purim? The Rambam writes it should be a big, lavish feast, boso v'yayin. So most people, especially in the modern world, don't eat a heavy feast of boso v'yayin for breakfast. You eat a light breakfast, you eat a salad, you eat cereal, you eat, I don't know what, a tuna fish sandwich. That is not Sudas Purim. And Sudas Purim should be enjoyable. And it should be a big feast. And the Rambam writes, Bosa v'yayin. And by Sudas Purim, we want to have guests. We want the family to come together. That is not going to happen in the morning. Probably that is the reason why the minhag is to make Sudas Purim in the afternoon. So the Tumas Adeshan offers one explanation, because we're busy with the other mitzvahs in the morning, and maybe there might be another explanation as well. The other minhag when Purim falls after Shabbos is, do the same as you do every year. Late afternoon is Sudas Purim, Poires Mape Umekadesh. So if a person is in the middle of a Suda, and Shabbos enters, Poires Mape Umekadesh, in the middle of the Suda, covers the chalas, he makes kiddush, and then he continues and keeps on his meal. So many people in Yerushalayim follow the minhag of Poires Mape Mekadesh. This minhag, when Purim falls Erev Shabbos, is already found in the Rishonim, the Meiri twice, Ksubas Dav Zayin, and in Psochim Kuf Aleph. So we find this minhag twice in the Meiri, Poires Mape Mekadesh, when Purim falls on Erev Shabbos. And yes, it is interesting. And some people in Yerushalayim follow this minhag. I'm not very excited about Poires Mape Mekadesh. And my minhag is Keminhag Avoisai V'Raboisai. I don't make the Sudas Purim in the morning breakfast for two different reasons. Yes, we are all very busy Purim morning, primarily with the Mishloach Manos, receiving Mishloach Manos, sending Mishloach Manos. And as a Rav and a leader of a community, people constantly come in and out. And as I said before, it's hard to bring family together, and it's hard to eat bosa v'yayin and a heavy meal for Shachris. But I do not wait till late afternoon, because there is an Inyan, sheyochel Sudas Shabbos l'teyavoin. Besides Samach lamincha, we don't eat a Suda. So my minig is early afternoon. Not necessarily before Chatzos. Early afternoon, we eat Sudas Purim, and we finish a few hours before Shabbos Kodesh, at least 2 or 2.5 hours before Shabbos, having time to prepare for Shabbos. So why not Poiris Mape Umekadosh? First of all, going back to Reisha and Aleph, Dina Kiddush Yom, I think it's in Kafachayim Sivkot Nechov Beis, he says, according to the Riyah Kodesh and the Mekabolim, there is a Seder, and that is the Seder HaOilamois. Starting off with Kabbalah Shabbos, Kriya Shema, Marav, Kiddush, Sudas Shabbos, that's the Seder. And if we change that Seder, we're Mahapech the Oilamis. So, when you start earlier, and in the middle of the Suda, you say Kabbalah Shabbos. So, Poiris Mekadosh, when will they daven? Some daven after finishing the meal, some daven in the middle of the meal, which is another problem, which is a considerable hefsek, especially if you need to leave the house to daven. Some daven in their homes. So one problem about Poiris Mekadosh is you're not getting into Shabbos L'Teyoven. You're not eating Sudas Shabbos L'Teyoven. You ate most of the meal already. You had Bosor V'yayin. So this Purim needs Bosor V'yayin. So when are you going to eat that Bosor V'yayin? Before Shabbos? They're not eating Sudas Shabbos L'Teyoven. You're going to wait for Shabbos? Is it still defined as Sudas Purim? So the poskim say, most of the Suda needs to be Maboid Yom. So if most of the Suda is Shabbos, Poiris Mapa Mekadosh, then you didn't eat a proper Sudas Purim. If most of the Suda is Sudas Purim, then you're not Kedei Sheyochel Sudas Shabbos L'Te'ovan. There are also some halachic problems with Poiris Mapa Mekadosh, because Reish Ayin Aleph Siv Dalad, the Machaber brings two different opinions. Do we say Berchas HaMoitzi? He already said Berchas HaYayin, and he already said Berchas HaMoitzi. So how's he going to make Kiddush? Shulchan Aruch says he makes Kiddush without Berchas HaYayin. Or he could make Kiddush on Pas. But even if he makes Kiddush on Pas, there's a machlokes whether he says HaMoitzi or not. And the Shoresh, the origin, the rationale of this machlokes is, would Kiddush be a hefsek between Berchas HaMoitzi, beginning of the Suda, and after the Suda? Another problem would be Lecha Mishnah. So, yes, you bring a new Lecha Mishnah after Kiddush, but according to Rashi, Shabbos Kuf Yud Zayin, the entire Inyan of Lecha Mishnah is Berchas HaMoitzi and Lecha Mishnah. So if you're not going to say HaMoitzi, you're losing out Lecha Mishnah. So Poiris Mapa Mekadosh is one problem al pi Kabbalah. Problem number 2 is Sheyochel Sudas Shabbos L'Teyoven. Problem number 3 is, when are you going to eat the bulk of the Suda? When are you going to have Bosor V'yayin? If it's Sudas Purim before Shabbos, that's not Koid Shabbos, and it's not L'Teyoven. If it's after Kiddush, would that still be considered Sudas Purim? If we would say that it's both Sudas Purim and Sudas Shabbos, doesn't fit in with the Yerushalmi. Because the Yerushalmi, Hayom Edalef, in Masechet Psochim, the Yerushalmi explains, why can't we have Sudas Purim on Shabbos, when Yudalet falls on Shabbos, when Tezvav falls on Shabbos? So when Yudalet falls on Shabbos, we have the Suda Erev Shabbos. Tezvav falls on Shabbos, we have the Suda Sunday. Why not on Purim? The Rishonim suggest various different reasons, and the Achronim as well. But the Yerushalmi says, the Posek of Megillah says, Lasois oisam yemei mishta v'simcha. Lasois oisam. Purim means to be our initiative. We are the ones that make mishta v'simcha. But if it's Shabbos, Kodesh Baruch Hu dictated 6,000 years ago, Lasois oisam yemei mishta v'simcha. That is Oinik Shabbos and Kavoid Shabbos and Simchas Shabbos. So according to Yerushalmi, Sudas Shabbos cannot be Sudas Purim. So what is Poiris Mapa Mekadosh about? Is only the first half Sudas Purim, the second half is Sudas Shabbos? So you might as well bench. So what's the Indian of Poiris Mapa Mekadosh? So for all these different reasons, my minig, and I follow in the footsteps of Minig Avoisai, Minig Raboisai, have Sudas Purim early afternoon, not breakfast when you're busy with Mishloach Monos and Matonas Levyoinim, not breakfast when it really would be difficult to eat Bosav Yayin. Early afternoon, have Sudas Purim and bench on time, and then Shabbos Kodesh is Shabbos Kodesh. Don't mix Purim with Shabbos. Purim is Purim. Shabbos Kodesh is a different spirit, a different Avirah. Shabbos is Shabbos, Purim is Purim. I am never mezalzel in anyone's minhag, and I do not mean to argue that those that are noyeg Poiris Makadosh are not doing right. So I explained the three different approaches. The Ramah, that probably is Minig Ashkenaz, based on the Trumas Hadesh, and when Purim falls out of Shabbos, we should have the soon in the morning. Some, and it has two sources in the Meiri, Psochim and Ksubis, Poiris Mapa Mekadesh. And we start with the Purim like every year, late afternoon. The other minig is early afternoon, having Sudas Purim, finishing on time, and Shabbos is Shabbos, as every other Shabbos. Seder Avoinamos, as they should be. The Vilna Gaon had a unique minig, not only Purim Erev Shabbos, but every year. And in Masarav, Reish Mem Ches, it is told that the minig agro was, he always davened Vesikin. Right after davening Vesikin, he had Kriyas HaMegillah. He washed early morning hours, and he sat in Suda till after nightfall. And the Gru argued, Lasos oisam yemei mishta v'simcha. The entire day needs to be a day of mishta v'simcha. Did they go and eat all day? I assume he didn't. The Gaon was not a Rav son. Well, it's a Chilas Mitzvah. And by Chilas Mitzvah, you could eat and you should eat a lot. But if you eat all day, it's going to be ultimately an Achila Gasa. I wasn't there, but I am quite convinced that the Sudas Purim of the girl was Pum Memalel Rav Ravon, Rechusha Marachshan Sfosov, Toira, Nigla, Nister, Leitzuma Shalom, Lekedusha Sayoim. But he didn't get up from his table, and he was sitting b'mishta v'simcha from morning till night. Lasis oisam yemei mishta v'simcha. So the Gaon's minig was unique. It is not like anything we know today, and therefore we cannot bring a raya from the Gaon to each of the three different minhagim that I explained regarding Sudas Purim when Purim falls Erev Shabbos. So once again, Pruzim, most of the world has Purim, Sudas Purim, Erev Shabbos, three different minhagim. In Yerushalayim, we wouldn't have this problem because Sudas Purim Yerushalayim is on a Sunday, and therefore would have a normal Sudas Purim, and it's going to be very different than any other Purim in normal circumstances and on normal days. One of the big questions we will have in Yerushalayim, Mikra Megillah B'Yudalad, is it defined as Mikra Megillah B'Zmano or Shaloi B'Zmano? Because in Megillah Heyom Adalef we find the Machloikes Ameroim, Rav and Ravasi, Megillah Shaloi B'Zmano in Kaironoisa Ela Ba'Asora. And everybody agrees Megillah Shaloi B'Zmano needs Asora. The Machloikes Rav and Ravasi is Megillah B'Zmano whether we need Asora. What is defined as Megillah Shaloi B'Zmano? Rashi writes on the spot, Kforim Shemagdim Aliyoyim HaKnisa. Very first mission, a Mesechet Megillah. Megillah in a case, Yud Aleph, Yud Beis, Yud Gimel, Yud Aleph, Tezvav. Yud Aleph, Yud Beis, Yud Gimel? We don't know about that. We never do that. Yes, Bismanaza we don't. But other days of the Mishnah we did. B'nei Kforim Magdim Aliyoyim HaKnisa. So if Purim falls Friday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Sunday, Magdim Aliyom HaKnisa. Sheni v'chamishi Beizn Yoshvim. B'nei HaKforim had a special leniency. They could read B'yom HaKnisa Monday or Thursday before Purim, and that is Yud Aleph, Yud Beis, Yud Gimel, and not only Yud Dalet and Tesvav, which are Purim, and Shushan Purim. But already in Megillah Beis Amud Aleph, the Gemara says that din was bottled. It's no longer Benogea Bisman Hazeh. So Rashi writes, Megillah Shelo Bismano B'nei Kforim. All the Rishonim wonder on Rashi. But Rav and Ravasi were B'yamei HaMeroim. B'yamei HaMeroim, this halach was no longer relevant. Most of the Rishonim, Rashba, Ritva, Rosh, Ran, right. When Purim falls on Shabbos, either Yud Dalet or Tezvav, so when Yud Dalet falls on Shabbos, we're magdam for Yud Gimel. Tezvav falls on Shabbos, Mukofer or magdam for Yud Dalet. That is Shelo Bismano. And that's the psak of the Mishnah Berurah in three different sources. Tofrei Tzadik, Sifkot and Samachalaf Samachvav, Sharatzian Nun Tes, Mishnah Berurah says, Purim Meshulash, Yerushalmi cannot read the Megillah only by Sorah. And if you don't have a Sorah, you don't make Habroch. That's the Pri Chodesh. Kaf HaChaim agrees. It's based on the Rashba, Ritva, Rosh, Ran. Chazon Ish disagrees, and the Chazon Ish says, the entire world reads on Yud Dalet, so how could that be Shelo Bismana? Is there anything more Bismana than Yud Dalet, especially when Tezvav falls on Shabbos? The entire Jewish world reads together on Yud Dalet. Chazon Ish, Kuf Nun Hey Beis, argues that is Bismana. So how could the Chazon Ish go against Rash, Borit, Vorosh? Two reasons. First of all, he mobilizes the Rambam to his side. And his diak in Rambam is a very powerful diak. Perek Aleph Halacha Zayin, Hilchas Megillah, when the Rambam brings the din of Shaloi Bismana in Kodesh Noisa Ela Basora, the Rambam writes, Kol HaKodesh Lefnei Yud Dalet, that is Shaloi Bismana. Let's make this clear. HaKodesh Lefnei Yud Dalet. It's clear in Rambam. Yud Dalet is never defined as Shaloi Bismana. Even for Mekofim, when Tezvav falls on Shabbos, Yud Dalet is not Shelo Bismano. It is Bismano. I just want to note that Ritva and Darash also bring a different opinion. So even in the Ritva and Darash, it's not muchlat, it's not definitive that this would be defined as Shelo Bismano. Emes Nochan Adovar. The Ritva brings two opinions, and he writes, the opinion, Tezvav falling on Shabbos, Yud Dalet Shelo Bismano, that is Nochan. So he agrees with this opinion. Anyway, this is a huge machlokes rishonim, and we cannot be machriya between the Rambam and the Rashba. We cannot be machriya between the Chazon Ish and the Mishnah Berurah. But nevertheless, I paskin. In Yerushalayim, even Yechidim could make a brocha. And this has special importance in this time of our life. We are still in the midst of this terrible Mageifa. Numbers are coming down in Eretz Yisrael to our delight and to our simcha. Obviously, the huge campaign of vaccination is kicking in, and it is finally having an effect. 3 million people in Israel already got the second dose, the second vaccine. 4 million are between number 1 and number 2. But on the other hand, people are dying every day. This week we had a terrible tragedy. A 30-year-old pregnant woman passed away from COVID. The baby perished. The mother died. She left 4 Yisai Mamlach. And this woman was from a family that contemplated vaccinating or not. And she did not vaccinate. So, Chas v'sholom, I don't want to scare people. Yes, tens of thousands of pregnant women have healthy babies, even in this difficult time, but we are still in the middle of this terrible pandemic. Yesterday, 20 people died in Israel. Tragedy strikes us every day, and there are still close to 1,000 people in a bad state, in critical condition in Israel. People that are very ill from COVID. So what is the problem? People that have COVID-19, people that need to be in isolation. Women, because even 10 women have a din of yechidim, according to the Ramah, the end of Siman Tov Reish Tzadik. Chavivin Yisrael, Ashreichem Yisrael shemechaber v'nesem mitzvos. And I am afraid, if we will paskin that a yochid doesn't make a bracha, many of these people will come to shul. They will want to hear the bracha and Kriyas Megillah. They would not feel comfortable hearing a Megillah without a bracha or not saying a bracha. I don't want the women's section in every shul to be crowded, ladies coming to hear the bracha. And therefore I paskin, even a yochid could make a bracha this year. So, would I say other years I paskin without a bracha, this year with a bracha? Is that legitimate? Is that acceptable? I don't know. I don't think so. So we would say, hear the Megillah at home, be yochid, without a bracha. But I really think even in other years, one could make a bracha even as a yochid, shelo bismano. Not only because of the chashash, of the pachad, of spreading this terrible disease. And why is that? I said we cannot be machriya between the Chazon Ish and the Mishnah Berurah, especially this machlokes goes all the way back to the Rishonim. So the Mishnah Berurah and the Kaf HaChaim paskin sofek brachas lekula. But if there's a svek sveika, we could say a bracha. And if there is a svek sveika, 3 sveikas, I definitely think we could make a bracha. I don't have time today to deal with svek sveika besofek brachas. I will look for an opportunity in the near future to discuss this sugya because it's a fascinating sugya. But I just give maskona de milsa. I paskin, if there are 2 sveikas, 2 tzdodim lechumra, and even more so, if there are 3 sveikas, 3 tzdodim lechumra, we would no longer say sofek brachas lekula, and we may make a bracha. And in our case, there are 3 sveikas nechbodim, 3 tzdodim, that even a yochid could make a bracha if Tesvav falls on Shabbos. Number 1, the topic we just discussed. Machlokes Mishnah Berurah Chazon Ish, Rashbo Rambam, definitely is a sofek nichbad. Whether you daled l'mokofin when Tesvav falls on Shabbos is bisman or shaloi bismana. Number 2, Shittas Rashi, source of the Sugya Heyom Adalaf, Ritvo, Balamor, various different Rishonim. The entire din shaloi bismana, you need a sorah, is only a lechatchila din. But b'di'evet, if a person doesn't have a sorah, he could make a bracha. That is Shittas Rashi. And Rashi is not alone. And even if Rashi would be alone, Rasha medabram b'kol mokom, it definitely is mitztaref to a svek sveika. Number 3. The Ramah, quoting the Orchos Chaim, Tov Reish Tzadik Sif Yud Ches, the Ramah writes, even bezman a person lachatchila should be mishtadel to have a sorah mishum presum enisa. However, if in shul they already had a minyan, then this town, this mokom already had presum enisa. Even a yochid could read lachatchila. Chazon Ish says the same would apply to shaloi bezman shetzorech hasorah. So if in shul they had a minyan, even yechidim could read with a bracha. These are the 3 tzedodim, and when there's a svek sveika, definitely a svek sveika, one could make a bracha, and that is our case. There's a big chiddush in Sofnos Paneach. The Sofnos Paneach is always a chiddush. His entire derech halimud was totally unconventional. But the Sofnos Paneach argues there are 2 mitzvahs in Mikra Megillah. Kriyas HaMegillah is one. Persum Enisa is another. That would be the question whether Shaloi Bismano, one, would make a bracha or not. If you recall, one of my Chanukah Shiurim, and I wrote about this at great length in Menchaso Shamoydim Chelik Beis, I argue in Shittas Atur Chanukah, there are two different concepts, two different inyonim. Zeichel Hanes and Persum Hanes. Hadlukas Ner is Zeichel Hanes. And the Zeichel Hanes you're Makayim even in your home. Al Pesach Beisoy mibifnim, not mibachutz. Lachas shekol soregel menashuk. The Torah paskins, b'di'evid you can light ner Chanukah till alois hashachar. There's no longer Persum Hanes. So I argued ner Chanukah is both Zeichel Hanes and Persum Hanes. Similar svara we find in Sofas Menech regarding Megillah. We need a sorah, but that is just an additional din of Persum Hanes. Even b'yochid, there's a mitzvah of Kriyas Megillah. I think this chakira, this svara, is more reasonable by Chanukah than by Purim. Because by Chanukah we do find Menichal Shulchan Avedayoi. Chanukah is a Zeichel Hanes Persum Hanes. It is less reasonable by Purim, but yesh mukam loime can gam Purim because Purim and Chanukah have so much in common. They're both zmanim derabanan, both are Persum Hanes. So this is an interesting svara of the Tzavnas Paneach. Tamtzes advoram lani is daiti. Not only because of COVID. Generally, I think Purim Meshulash. Yudanid even Yechidim could make a bracha because there are street stodim for the bracha and not against the bracha. And when there are three tzdodim lechiyuv, svek, svek, sveike, I think one could make a bracha. Another question that came up with all its splendor, I don't think that's the right word, but all its relevance, would Zoom help, or even telephone? Because Persum Hanes, and Chanukah it's about seeing, Purim it's about hearing. Would that help? So if a person is in isolation or he's ill and he can't leave his house and he wants the mitzvah basara, would Zoom help? Would a telephone call help? Maybe. But not entirely. And this brings us to an interesting question. Reb Hesh Pesach Frank, Mikroi Kodesh, Purim Semenun, argues that in the concept of Megillah Ba'asora, the 10 people don't need to be in the same place. If a person reads the Megillah out loud from Megillah Ksheira, 10 neighbors are hearing. Everybody in his own room, they don't even see each other. By Megillah, it's okay. He bases his ruling on the Ritva. And the Ritva is twice. Megillah Heyom Medalef Roshon Chov Zayin Omid Beis. Hoya Oiver Machoire Beis HaKnesses V'Shomeh Mikra Megillah Yotzo. The Ritva brings the Kash of the Rishonim. If he's Machoire Beis HaKnesses, he's not Mitzdaref Laminyan. So how is he Yotze? Ritva explains, Asoro B'Mikra Megillah is not like Dovish B'Kedusha. You don't need Siruf. It's just about Persum Hanes. And if 10 people hear the Kriya, there is Persum Hanes. Reb Hesh Pesach Frank understood the Ritva. If 10 people hear the Kriya, they do not need to be together because you don't need Siruf. All you need is Persum Hanes. In the Ritva, one could say this Pshat, but in the Beis Yosef, Sof Simen Tov Reish Tzadik, and in the Levush as well, same source, Sof Simen Tov Reish Tzadik, Sif Yud Ches. The Beis Yosef and the Levush, their interpretation is, no. You need 10 people in the same room. But if you have B'mokoyim HaKriya Persum Hanes, anybody standing outside of Shul is part of that Persum Hanes. And he is Yoitza Kriya Ba'asoro. He is not defined as a Yuchid, but you need 10 people in the same room, and therefore Zoom would not be the solution. If it'll make you feel better, you could listen, you could Zoom, but that would not make it Asora. Asora is only if 10 people are together, and then even the one that is Achoyre Beis HaKnesses could be Yoitze Megillah Ba'asora. Let me share with you a short thought, which to me is very appealing. And this halacha is very baffling, perplexing. In Yiddishkeit, your mind is so important, your sanity, your clarity. How could there be a mitzvah getting drunk and not knowing what you're doing or what you're saying? Chai v'nishul v'suma, till he no longer differentiates between Ora Haman and Baruch Mordechai. But isn't that what Purim is all about? I think the hymn of Purim is Shoshanas Yankov. That's the song of Purim. Shoshanas Yankov Tzolav Samecho. Ora Haman v'Baruch Mordechai. If you can't do on Purim, so when are you going to sing Shoshanas Yankov? When? Pesach, Rosh Hashanah, Tisha B'Av. So when are you going to sing Shoshanas Yankov if you can't do it on Purim? Isn't Purim all about Hoidoy Al Haneis and Simchas Haneis? And that necessitates knowing the difference between Ora Haman and Baruch Mordechai. So Gedolei HaPoskim went to extremes trying to understand this then. My time is very limited today, so I'll just get to the point, the way I understand it. And this pshat has so much appeal to me. It is brought in the name of the Gaon. Megillah Esther is Gilui HaSeter. Megillah is a Lashon of Gilui, and Esther is Seser. We already find in the Gemara, Churan Kuf Lamed Tes, Esther min HaTorah Menayin. Where do we find the remes for Esther? V'onochi haster asti eponai b'yom hahu. So, Esther is about Seser. What does that mean? The only nace that we are to remember for eternity, every year, mishpocha, that was totally b'derech hateva, without any manifestation of any supernatural event. Anything lamala b'derech hateva is Purim. Sholosh Lagolim were totally miraculous. Yitzias Mitzrayim and Ma'amad Har Sinai, even Hanukkah. The fact that Bnei Chashmonu were victorious on the battlefield was a miracle, but that is a miracle in disguise, in concealment. But we had the Nes Pach HaShemen, which is supernatural. Purim, everything was in the context of natural phenomena. The Nes is obvious, but you need to look for it. You need to open your eyes and to see the amazing sequence of events. Everything that seemed to be so tragic and so awful, ultimately, v'nahafichu, and everything that seemed to be part of the Gzeira turned out as part of the salvation, part of the Geula. That is the Nes Purim. V'onochi hastir astir ponai. And the way I see it, that is the reason we don't say Hallel on Purim. And a Megillah Daf Yudala, the Gemara says, Kriyosa Zuhilula. But why not say Hallel? It is a hidden Hallel, a Hallel in concealment, because the Nes was in concealment. And that is what Purim is all about. Bringing out the Seser. Tearing the mask off everything, of the world, and seeing Hashgochas Hashem. And maybe that is the reason we wear masks on Purim in the first place. To take off the mask. The mask comes to emphasize Purim was a hidden Nes. It was a hidden salvation. We say a hidden Hallel. So we hide ourselves behind a mask to take off that mask and to bring out what is hidden. Chai v'nish levesume. What do we want to hear? Chas v'sholom, we don't want to hear Orah Mordechai v'Baruch Haman. No. We want to hear loud and clear Orah Haman v'Baruch Mordechai. But we want it to come from the heart, not menasofa v'lachutz, not from your lips. All year round, we know what we are allowed to say and what we prefer not to say. We know what people expect to hear. And we all want to be politically correct. So it's no wonder at all that we could say all year round, Orah Haman v'Baruch Mordechai. Purim, we want to be convinced that it comes ma'omek nefesh, from the depth of your heart. And that is why Chai v'nish levesumi, you need to become drunk and your mind loses control. Let's say what your heart says. Purim, we don't want your mind to speak. We want your heart to speak, your nefesh, your neshama. There are some people that'll never get drunk. You'll give them $1 million, they won't get drunk. They're afraid to become drunk because if you lose control, it might cost them the marriage, might cost them the status. He might say things that he prefers to keep to himself. That is what Purim is about. Megillas Esther, Gilui HaSeisar. It is all about Shoshanas Yankev. And the only thing we want to hear is Arahomen V'Borach Mordechai. But we want to hear it not Menasofa V'Lachutz, not off your lips, but from the depth of your heart. And that is why Chai V'Nish Levesuma Adela Yoda. Your mind loses control. Your mind no longer controls what you say and what you do not say. And your heart talks. That is what Purim is all about. Rabbeinu Shalom, it's 12 months, it's a year since this terrible pandemic started. We all remember Purim last year, and I was the first in Eretz Yisrael in Yerushalayim to be cautious. I called off the public chagiga in my home. And everybody that entered my house, one of my Yannikrach stood next to the door with alcohol. Some people become nervous. And there were no central plates on the table. Everybody that came in got his own personal plate. We knew nothing about masks then, all the way back then. But I did feel that this is the beginning of a terrible disease, b'siyata d'shmaya. And I said, Rabbeinu Shalom, mishpat harashon begehenim. It's 12 months. 12 months is enough. More than enough. Even in Gehenim, nobody is punished more than 12 months. So take this away, Rabbeinu Shalom, and let us be totally happy on Purim. But it doesn't seem to be. So this Purim will still need to be very cautious. Let us hope that Pesach, this will be over. Let us hope and daven. So you should all have a listige Purim, a happy Purim, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu yisameach et levaveinu, v'nahaf oichu asher yishletu haYehudim heimu b'saneihem, hu rachamon, hu yasa lanu, nisim v'neflois, kishem shosisu lavuseinu, bayom ha'mehem b'zman hazeh. So all of you should have a listige Purim, a freiliche Purim, and a beautiful Shabbos. Good Shabbos to everyone. And we should only hear B'Seides Tovis.